So the first thing we're going to look at is choosing the right style of imagery for your campaign. So we know all the basics now about how to use the camera, lighting, compositional styles, how to dress the sets. And then the final thing that we want to start thinking about is, what's the appropriate, and for want of a better word, vibe for this imagery, and what's the sort of environment that we're going to shoot them in. So let's go back to the brand that we created earlier in the brief, the chocolate brand. We didn't necessarily plan to do any shoots of people, but everything we've established there gives us enough information to inform the decisions we're going to make about what the appropriate style of imagery is for this campaign. Ultimately, it's the same as it has been throughout the rest of the process. What is it that we're trying to communicate? What is the mood that we're trying to achieve? What are our brand values? And who are we aiming at? So let's have a think about what different types of portrait photography there is. First off, there's environmental portraits. Environmental portraits is where we have a person, the subject, and they're shot in a space that tells us a story about that person. So an example of an environmental portrait might be a chef amidst their kitchen and potentially with all the expected utensils around them. This style of photography is great for anything that's quite documentary based, where we're trying to do a bio. Or it's also good for adverts where we're trying to present a certain character and imagine the audience to be imagining themselves in that scenario. Then next, the studio portraits. Now, studio portraits really are centered around the individual model or subject themselves. In this scenario, what we're really focusing on is what they look like physically and lighting them in a manner that flatters them the best or that speaks to their physical characteristics the most. Examples of studio portraits that we might see is people might just want to get a family photo. Also, we could have them for bios, for famous people, potentially in a newspaper column. So the next area that we're going to look at is lifestyle portraits. Now, lifestyle portraits have a very natural and candid feel. They're quite similar to environmental portraits, but these images are a bit less focused on the story around the person and more about capturing them in a flattering but quite candid and natural manner. Where we might see these images a lot is if they're being used for stock imagery or relatively plain kind of vanilla ads. These are images where we're trying to convey a certain emotion or story, but we're not actually really that interested in the model themselves. They're intentionally quite generic. And the final example of portraiture is headshots or corporate headshots. And these are your standard images that you might expect to see on one's LinkedIn profile. Many businesses like to have corporate headshots of their entire team. They're usually very simple, straightforward, and clean. Potentially, they might show the individual in their work environment. What informs the style of portrait photography that we're going to choose? Same as before, it's our brand and our brief and understanding our target audience. What is the mood that we're trying to create? What is the story that we're trying to convey? Who is it aimed at? Where will the image be distributed? And what does our brand value represent? When we know all of these, the style of imagery that we choose should reflect those factors. Why is it important? Well, it's the same as I've said before. It all really comes down to brand. Again, if we get it wrong, it undermines the message that we're trying to tell, which leaves us feeling out of touch with the intended audience, and we're wasting time, budget, and resources. Okay, so how do we go about finding the correct style of portrait photography is for our brand? So if we return back to the brief, as I said before, and we look at our brand's values and the campaign's values. So I look at the values of my chocolate brand. It's grounded, it's natural, it's very warm, it's luxurious. I know it's for women. So all of these things need to be reflected in the imagery. So when I think about the sort of the lighting, I want it to be soft and luxurious. I know what the palette is. It's going to be earth tones. So that speaks for how the clothing is going to look and my set design. And then when I think about, okay, what's the purpose of the story that I'm trying to tell? So for my image, I want to present what my target audience looks like and doing something that my target audience might do. Maybe let's have them reading a book in a luxurious setting. This is starting to create an aspirational lifestyle image. This is the story that people are aspiring to. I plant the products within there, and potentially I have my model eating the chocolate. And for this, I'm thinking I want to have quite a candid image. I don't necessarily want them to be looking at the camera. I want the viewer to think of themselves as the person in the image rather than think of the person in the image as being the story itself. So I'm probably going to be going for a lifestyle portrait. Okay, then so how do we go about planning that image? Well, so I've just discussed a lot of the things that we know we're going to need. And as I've said before, mood boards are great to making sure that we have all of those reference points collated together. But some of the things that we want to think about are the particular poses. Potentially go through existing imagery that's out there and create a mood board on poses. I want to make sure I achieve my correct lighting style. And then I want to think seriously about what that person should look like. Okay, so let's recap. So there's many different types of portrait photography. Each style or subgenre of portrait photography has a particular use case. Some of them have multiple use cases. Understanding which style you want to go for in your imagery is about understanding the story that you want to tell, your target audience, and the brand. A few of the options are environmental portraits. This is about the subject themselves and the environment that they exist within. Studio portraits, which is a particular focus just on the aesthetics of the actual model or talent or subject. Lifestyle portraits. These are a little bit more candid, and it's more about the story than it is about the individual within it. And then finally, corporate headshots.